Our next speaker is Jesus Salvador Treviño, and he is a renowned writer and director who's produced and directed more than 100 hours of primetime network and cable television programs. His many PBS documentaries include América Tropical of 1971 that Leslie mentioned, and that was the documentary that brought widespread attention to the whitewashing of the Siqueiros mural in 1932. Jesus's work is, of course, one of the catalysts for conserving this mural, and he's undoubtedly one of the champions of América Tropical. For the making of the documentary, he arranged for conservators from Mexico to visit the mural and assess its condition, and the current project is actually available on his website, which I think he might mention at the end. And we'll be hearing, as Leslie said, from one of those conservators. Jesus is going to discuss América Tropical through the eyes of a filmmaker. Please welcome Jesus Treviño.
Thank you. Now,
there's some water down here if you would like.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to try to breeze through this. They gave us 20 minutes, so I hope I can do this then. I was first introduced to the América Tropical mural in 1968 by Dr. Shiver Goldman. And some of you may know her. She was quite a lady. She and I met in the summer of 1968 while we were both participating in a 7-day set-in at the offices of the Los Angeles City School Board. What developed was a durable, albeit improbable, friendship between, I was 21-year-old Chicano student activist, and she was a 30-something art historian who a decade earlier had been brought before the House Un-American Activities Committee for her outspoken views on social justice. Shiver, we love her, was, old school commie. And I loved her for it. The set-in, incidentally, was protesting the ouster of a high school teacher from Lincoln High School, Sal Castro. And this 7-day set-in, 7 days, 7 nights, at the end about 30 of us got arrested, resulted in one of the very first urban victories of the Chicano civil rights movement of the 1960s. So I'm very proud of what we accomplished. At the time, I was deeply committed to the Chicano struggle for civil rights and anxious to learn all I could about the occluded history of Mexican Americans. Shiver soon became my mentor, my mental sparring partner, and introduced me not just to Mexican American history, but also to Mexican art and the work of Los Tres Grandes. Her vast collection of photographic slides of Mexican murals was a treasure trove for me. When I undertook a 3-minute film telling the story of Mexico's history through its art. It was during our work together on this short student film I did titled La Historia de México, and this was a little Super 8 film, again 3 minutes long. I did single frames on about 200 images of Mexican art, so that in 3 minutes you went from the conquest to present-day Mexico. Anyway, she had acquired during this time in a biography of Siqueiros written by the Mexican art historian Raquel Tibol. And in the book, there were 2 reproductions or details of the América Tropical mural. I was immediately intrigued by the image of this crucified Indian I saw in the book, and Shiver offered to take me up to the roof of the Italian Hall. So in the fall of 1968, Shiver secured permission from the director of El Pueblo de Los Angeles, then Mario Valadez, to gain access to the old Italian hall. We climbed up the stairs, climbed through the window, and onto the roof of the adjoining building. There's Shiver. So what we found, of course, was the image that we are now also familiar with of the crucified Indian. I inspected the mural, and the color from some of the images had begun to fade. I'm looking for that photo now. Oops, oh, sorry, I'm going ahead of myself here. In any case, the color was barely visible. A layer of whitewash was flaking away from the wall, doubtless the result of rain and sun and the wind to which the mural had been subjected for 36 years. The lower portion of the mural was covered with the black tar that rain-proofed the adjoining roof. The image of the central figure was incredibly powerful, and the two guerrilleros, soldiers to the right, taking aim at the American eagle atop the crucified Indian, spoke to me on many, many levels. Standing on the roof, Shiver reiterated her dream to someday see the mural restored. She suggested that, to me that a documentary on the mural would help publicize its existence and garner the support needed for its preservation. Inspired by the mural in front of us, we made a pact that afternoon. We would work together to see if the mural could be restored. As a student filmmaker, however, I had as yet neither the resources nor the craft to make the film that Shiver and I envisioned. I knew there was a story here to be told, but I wasn't even sure what that story was. It would be almost 3 years later before I'd consider the mural again. During that time, I was hired by KCT as a production assistant on the first Mexican-American magazine format show to air in Southern California, Ahora. And it was at Ahora that I wrote a series delving into Mexican-American history, the occluded history, the hidden history, called La Raza History. We would have a 10-minute episode once a week that I would write and produce. So I was immediately interested in this history that I knew existed but that had been occluded. When the Ahora series ended in June of 1970, I stayed on at KCT, first as an associate producer, but by November of 1970, I was a full-fledged producer, and I decided that now was the time to undertake this mural that had been there in the offing for 3 years. My first task was to get the general manager and program czar of KCT, Charles Allen, to approve the Siqueiros mural as subject matter for the KCT documentary. I went about this, I must admit, in a somewhat devious way. I arranged for my then wife and I to meet Mr. Allen for dinner in Chinatown. As you know, Chinatown is immediately adjacent to Olvera Street. I selected a restaurant within walking distance of the mural. After dinner, during the course of which I made sure that all of us drank a considerable quantity of wine, I suggested that we take a walk. As I directed us toward Olvera Street, I began my narrative about the visit of the great Mexican muralist David Alfaro Siqueiros in 1932. And at first, Mr. Allen was, listened politely. But when we got to the part about how Maestro Siqueiros had painted this controversial figure of a crucified Indian, I could see he was becoming intrigued. When I got to the part about how the mural had been whitewashed, then he was really interested. Where did you say this mural was? By then, we had arrived at the corner of Main and Brooklyn Avenue, now Cesar Chavez. I walked him a few more steps south on Main Street, right over by the parking lot, and I pointed across the street to the roof of the old Italian hall, where, in spite of the dim lamplight, the mural was visible. He gave me the green light to produce the documentary on the spot. In December of 1970, I began work on the documentary. The first task was to locate and interview local artists who had worked on the mural with Siqueiros. Shiver had told me about a group of artists known who had studied with Siqueiros, and we were able to identify two of these fresco block painters, John Weiskell and Millard Sheets. Both had worked with Siqueiros, and more importantly, John Weiskell had retained two photos of the mural, one showing the detail in the center, this photo here, and the other a wide panoramic photograph of the entire mural. The black and white photos were of pristine quality. I made copies for myself and Shiver, and these two photos would become the basis of all of my renderings of the mural for the documentary I was to make, and to my knowledge are the original source of many of the imagery that has come of these photos. For the next 3 months, I did extensive research trying to locate more visuals of the mural and of Siqueiros during his stay in Los Angeles. After all, this was going to be a documentary, not a radio show. I visited the Los Angeles Times photographic morgue and found photos of the mural Siqueiros had painted at the Chenard School of Art street meeting and a photo of América Tropical taken from the street level. You saw it earlier today. that showed a portion of the mural. But I needed more images. So here's what I did. For well over a month, I daily visited the microfiche room. You may remember microfiche. The microfiche room at California State University at Los Angeles. My plan was simple. Doubtless there must have been some news coverage of the mural that Siqueiros had undertaken while in Los Angeles. Perhaps there'd be some mention of it in some of the dominant papers of the time. So I systematically set out to review each page of the Los Angeles Times from January 1st, 1932 to December 31st, 1932. By the end of each day, my eyes were blurry from fast-forwarding through the microfiche copies of the newspaper. I can honestly say that I have seen every single page. My eyes have witnessed every single page of the Los Angeles Times, including the ads from January to December of 1932. Well, my efforts paid off, and I was able to find gems like this, which was on the microfiche. And so then I took the negative of the microfiche and made inner negatives, and this became more fodder for my documentary. It was during the course of my daily perusal of each page of these two newspapers, the LA Times and Herald, that I would tell the story, that I would hit on how I was going to tell the story, because as I examined the newspapers, I occasionally would run across an article pertaining to an event in the Mexican-American community. There were news stories that, these news stories paled in comparison to the more extensive coverage of events taking place in the dominant society. So news of Albert Einstein's visit to Caltech, for example, was newsworthy, as was the kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh's baby. They merited, lengthy newspaper articles. But events pertaining to our history, like the thousands of Mexican and Mexican-Americans who were being deported weekly to Mexico during the Depression years, or the killing of the cousin of Mexico's then President Ortiz Rubio under highly questionable circumstances, merited barely a paragraph, if that. It suddenly hit me how this was like the image of the crucified Indian. Chicano history had also been whitewashed. The exploitation and discrimination denied. The contributions we made to American society went unrecognized. But now, even as the image of the crucified Indian was reemerging to visibility, so too the Chicano movement was resurrecting our own history and our own place in American society. The Mutual was indeed not only a historic and profound work of art, but an ideal metaphor for the emergence of the Chicano civil rights movement and our quest for our own identity and equality in America. The next step in my storytelling was to determine the answer to the basic question that Shiver Goldman and I had asked ourselves on the roof in 1968. Could the mural be restored? I realized that the documentary would not be complete without an authoritative answer to this fundamental question. And so after much prodding, I secured from my boss, Charles Allen at KCT, an additional film budget that allowed me to fly two experts from Mexico City, Jaime Mejia Servin and Josefina Quesada, who specialized in Mexican mural restoration, to come to the United States and examine the mural. Once again, Shiver was in the forefront, both identifying these two art experts, but also in helping to negotiate the logistics of their travel. Once Mejia and Quesada inspected the mural, I filmed their analysis. It seemed that Siqueiros had experimented with the new technology of the time, a spray gun, and to blast color into the wet Portland cement with which he had covered the wall of the old Italian hall. This approach differed from the traditional fresco process. In the fresco process, the paint was applied to the top layer of mural. When it faded, the color could be reapplied, the color refreshed. Because of the colors of the América Tropical had been blasted deep into the cement surface of the mural, the colors could not be refurbished in the traditional manner. The verdict was disappointing. It would not be possible to restore the colors of the mural to their original vibrancy. The bottom line, the mural could not be restored, only conserved or preserved from further damage. Jaime Mejia suggested that one way to preserve the mural was to remove it from the wall on the roof in sections and reconstitute it in some gallery or museum more suitable for public viewing. At the time, I think the notion of us having a viewing platform was not really something we were considering. Once the restorers had given their assessment, I felt I had all I needed to complete the film. but I was mistaken. After several weeks of editing the film, it became clear that we were missing a vital ingredient. We were trying to bake a chocolate cake, but we didn't have any chocolate in it. We were missing the maestro himself, David Alfaro Siqueiros, commenting on the original painting of the mural and how he felt about its preservation. So I interviewed Siqueiros. This notion of interviewing Siqueiros was heady stuff for a 23-year-old producer. By now, I had expended my $5,000 budget on the film. That's how much the film cost. And so I couldn't even consider taking a crew of 3 or 4 people down to Mexico City. I was able to twist Charles Allen's arm once again, and he did pay for one airfare, which was my own, and I took down a single system Oricon 16mm camera where the film and the audio are recorded on the same film. This is ancient technology, folks. And I did the interview, and Jaime Mejia, who's here present, was my assistant and logistics expert in helping me coordinate this with Siqueiros. It was awesome. 2 complete days with Siqueiros. He insisted on giving me a personal tour of the Polyforum, for which I will never forget that. It was just awesome. Anyway, América Tropical, the documentary, aired on KCT on June 22nd of 1971. The broadcast brought a new awareness of the mural to Southern California. Shiver and I were convinced that we had a chance to succeed in our dream of preserving the mural. We created the Save the Mural Committee. We envisioned donations coming not just from foundations and arts groups, but also from everyday citizens of East Los Angeles. We were convinced that our community would literally pay to see the mural preserved. Following Jaime Mejia's suggestion, we made initial inquiries into Plaza La Raza, a newly opened community center in Lincoln Heights, where we hoped to house the mural. We thought, let's house it in the barrio. The director of the Plaza La Raza was excited about the idea of having the mural on display there at the plaza, but there was no appropriate building there. So a new building designed especially to accommodate the mural would have to be built. Dr. Goldman and I also approached LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, hoping that they could provide a place for it. I don't know if you recall, but back in the 70s, the lower section of the main building there had Greek sculpture and stuff, and we thought, well, move the Greeks over. Before our efforts could gain any steam, however, we were greeted with an unexpected offer. A few months after the broadcast, I returned to Mexico City and screened the documentary for Siqueiros himself. For him, it was like home movies. Oh, there's Millard, there's Millard. He was so delighted by the film that he made an extravagant offer. He volunteered to paint a new mural in his modern style based on the original theme and imagery of América Tropical. He had huge panels left over from the mural he had completed at the Hotel Mexico, the March of Humanity, there at the Polyforum, and he could use these panels for the new mural. He would donate the mural to the people of Los Angeles. And this is the work in progress, América Tropical 2. Sadly, a few months after Siqueiros started work on América Tropical 2, he was diagnosed with cancer. He stopped work on the project to travel with his wife, Angelica, in the days that remained to him. He died January 6, 1974. The new mural was never completed. It's been 44 years since I stood on the rooftop adjoining the old Italian hall in Olvera Street with Shiver Goldman as we discussed our dream to see América Tropical preserved. Over those years, there have been many efforts to have the mural preserved, some motivated with good intentions and others a little bit more self-serving. Many people have wanted to paint it. I remember Shiver's rejoinder forever was, you don't paint over the Mona Lisa. Shiver Goldman was involved in one way or another in all of these efforts, always safeguarding the artistic integrity of Siqueiros' work. It is with distinct pleasure and satisfaction that I see the dream that Shiver and I had so long ago finally come to a reality through the intervention of so many, many great people. My only regret is that Shiver cannot be here to appreciate the fruits of her labor. Thank you.